there's outsourcing to benefit a cost reduction. In other words, let's just do the same thing we've been doing, but do it with less expensive talent. But then I think there is an outsourcing that is much more around expertise. And I think we've seen that over several decades in terms of, design firms having engineering, they don't do engineering in-house, it's pure, and then you're even seeing with architecture firms that, we only do design and we actually have another architecture firm that does the drawings. So I would say there's two types of that. I mean, I think if you're going to partner with other firms that have a specialized niche or area, I don't know that that's really outsourcing. I think if you're going to take what we do today and just do it cheaper somewhere else, that's a different story. And so we're seeing a lot of that. The reality is, we do a lot of things internationally, and you start seeing wages going up overseas. You see weak dollar. That once that gap starts to close a little bit, the pain and suffering and brain damage of working with someone across the globe becomes less interesting.
I do think, just anecdotally, being in and around the business, what I'm hearing from people is when they've outsourced as a means of cutting cost, except for some very specific areas like rendering services and those types of things, they've had a mixed bag of results with outsourcing, and whether that's bridging a cultural gap or an expertise gap or a communications gap. But I do agree with the point that there are many more firms who are trying to focus on what they're best at doing and find other people who are good at the pieces that they may not be as good at. And if that's production versus design, or modeling services and rendering illustration services versus something else.
We have people that commute 45 minutes an hour, and we talk about tough times a lot. And one of the things that we talked about was when gas was getting very expensive, we kind of asked the question, do people really need to come to the office every day? And I don't think a year ago we wouldn't have necessarily asked that question, but when your employees come to you and say, gosh, I'm not getting paid more, but I'm spending more to get here. And then we looked at it and said, well, do we have the technology infrastructure in place to support people working from home? And in fact, we did. It was built in, so to speak. But then we initiated we have some people that are a day a week from home or 2 days a week. I think when we talk about tough times, when it hits the pocketbook, people do change their behavior. I think, a year ago our employees would have said, no, I think I'm better coming into the office. I think, I need to be with the team. Now they plan on being out of the office a day a week or 2 days a week in some cases, and work from home. And when we look at that and we say, well, it's saving them money, but at the end of the day, we're just not spending. We're not wasting, so to speak. But I think tough economies are a good time for people to really rethink and be able to communicate why they're doing something. Just like going to a client and saying, do I really need to fly down there? Well, there's an economic impact, and there's also, an environmental impact to that.
I mean, right now, from our subcontractor perspective, we're having to educate more and more subcontractors, and we've seen the bids we receive go down, actually. There's a lot of counties I just moved to Georgia, but I'm learning that there's a lot of counties here that do prototype high schools, and we just earlier this year priced a prototype high school that was the same one we priced 20 months ago, and it actually was cheaper now than it was 20 months ago. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, but a lot of our subs numbers were lower. The quality of work we're seeing is not as high a level of standard as it used to be. So it's getting tougher, and we're also starting to see that a lot of the firms that used to be in the residential market are now coming over into the commercial market, and it's a totally different ballgame in the commercial market than it is in the residential market. So it is tough. It is tough.
I don't think we're seeing anything intentional. I think what we're seeing is because people are very cognizant of their costs, they're overtaxing their people. And when people are working, in an architecture firm, they're working. They usually were working only 60 hours a week, and now they're working 80 hours a week. Yeah, it's one of those. You tax your people that way. Things will get missed. Things will get hurried. You also have end clients that have a financing window or some deadline that they have, so they're pushing just as hard. Well, we call it running with scissors. I mean, you're gonna eventually get hurt. So, so we're seeing that. I think we're seeing a lot more critical thought being put into design. We had one client that designed a U-shaped building. It went out for budgeting, came back an L-shaped building. But they had to create the phasing so that they could incorporate the next phase. So there's a lot of, can we phase it out? Can we do the, so there's a lot of that going on.
Well, the good news is I think both of our presidential candidates are talking about using the stimulus to generate green jobs for the future. I mean, if we take the auto industry, are we going to provide financial stimulus packages to the auto industry? We would be foolish to say, take our money, keep building cars that are, every year have lower and lower miles per gallon ratings. If we're going to provide that kind of a stimulus, I hope that we're going to be wise enough to say we need to build the infrastructure for the next century, not the past century. And green jobs are going to be that way. I think, again, both candidates have talked about how much we're hemorrhaging in terms of the billions of dollars we send every year to other nations for energy. So that's, to me, the great opportunity we have to reinvent our economy.